From car parking to banking and GP visits, we must stop punishing the elderly for the crime of not being able to install or operate an app. So says my next guest. Baroness Altmann, the former pensions minister, has taken up the story of 84-year-old Chris Perfides, who arrived at a friend's memorial service only to discover he could only leave his car if he paid by app or used an automated payment line. Unable to get to grips with either, he left his car and, of course, received inevitably a parking fine. His son left to sort out that fine following his father's death. Well, we're joined by Baroness Altmann now. Ros Altmann, appreciate your time.
Sure, good afternoon.
This is a growing problem.
It certainly is. I mean, increasingly, companies and even public bodies seem to be expecting everybody across the country to be able to engage digitally with the services that they might really need for their everyday lives. And it's simply not the case that everybody can manage. You know, there will be millions of people who will be digitally disadvantaged by this. And it is a form of disguised discrimination, because if you are elderly, if you are disabled, it's much, much harder for you to actually engage with apps. If you can't afford a smartphone or you've never used one and you just need to talk to somebody or use a machine that you can put cash in, it's not able to pay.
They're fiddly. I mean, if you're 80-something and your dexterity isn't what it was, I mean, just physically using it becomes difficult.
Well, it could be certainly very difficult. And the other problem is that if you have any issues with it, there's nothing you can do. You can't phone anybody. You can't call anyone to help you. There's no alternative if the app isn't working or if the payment system isn't working either. But if you can't use it in the first place, you know, there are elderly people who are telling me they used to be able to go to the park, but they need to park their car in a car park to be able to use the facilities. And they can't park their car if they haven't got a smartphone. I mean, that's ridiculous. There isn't a cash option. Or even in hospital car parks, sometimes people are finding that they can't manage. And this, poor Chris Perfides, you go to a memorial service and he'd been to this place before and suddenly they put in a new parking system which locked him out of being able to pay to park. So I think there needs to be some legislation that says if there is no alternative system for those people who aren't digitally enabled, then you shouldn't be allowed to force them to pay a fine for using that service. Because this is all, let's face it, this is about profit and cutting costs and benefiting shareholders. But what about the customer?
Well, just to be clear, I mean, sometimes these are public institutions as well as private ones that are doing this. But you're right, the motive's the same, to cut down on the costs of dealing with cash. Ros Altmann, we've got to leave it there, but really appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. I ought to say, we all know 80-somethings who are perfectly capable and very happy to use iPhones, but you know what I mean.